Welcome into another edition of the Hops and Spirits Bar Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Green. We've got a great lineup for you tonight. It's another flight night, bourbon style. We'll be talking with the co-founders from Bespoken Spirits. If you haven't heard about them, you're in for a treat. They do things just a tad different than what you're used to. Don't forget to check out our partners, Nose Your Bourbon. That's right, nose like you're on your face, N-O-S-E. They have the Bourbon Nosing Kit, which contains 18 of the most commonly found aromas in bourbon. It really has helped me pick up those nuanced smells that actually make me sound like I know what I'm doing, because when I first started, I had no clue how everyone was getting those unique smells. But it is a great kit. Go to noseyourbourbon.com for the nosing kit. They have an expansion pack and a whole lot of other goodies. That's Nose Your Bourbon, N-O-S-E. Your Bourbon. They're also on Instagram and all of social media. We're also on social media at Hop Spirits, all one word. But we're here for a flight night. And I don't want to waste any more time because this is what is a lot of fun. And if you're watching, you can see there's a good group here tonight. And I'm going to introduce my panel first before I get to our guests, because I'm going to screw up some names here, but I don't think I will on a panel. Depending on where it is on the screen, you got Chris, better known as Jeff the Rabbit, who is host of Chug and Chat on Instagram on Sundays. Chris, good to see you again.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure. I look forward to trying this new whiskey.
We also have Ariella, or A, better known as Influenski on Instagram. A, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. Good to see you.
And no D this week. He is behaving himself. That's what I'll say. For that. No D on the panel this week, but our guests, we got two of them, so we kind of have a full crew. First up, I'm going to screw up the name, co-founder and I believe a material scientist, am I correct on that, Martin Janoski. How close was I? Not even close.
Not even close. Janoschik.
See, and I had it there too and I couldn't do it. Welcome in, Martin.
Thank you so much for having us.
And also co-founder and seasoned entrepreneur, Stu Aaron. See, I don't think I screwed that one up.
It's a lot easier.
Well, welcome in, guys. I guess we're just going to jump right into kind of what we got. We got four tonight, so we've got a lot. The first one up, if you're watching, is this nice little pink label. It's a special batch. Now, kind of what's unique about Bespoken is they don't take the 2 years or longer that most do, and we'll be talking about that. But can you guys talk a little bit about the special batch?
Yeah, love to. Thank you. So it's actually made from a bourbon mash. It's a high rye, 21 rye. The 4 malt or 5 malt, I always forget between. It's actually a spirit that originated from MGP. And this was actually part of one of our customer projects that we worked on. And when I smelled this batch, it reminded me of a very well-known Japanese whiskey. So we call this our Japanese-inspired whiskey primarily because it reminded me of that specific whiskey type. And it's I hope you're gonna agree, it's very floral. Right, it's high on fruitiness, right? I think it has a nice vanilla finish, and this is a spirit. So we started from a white spirit here. Technically, we actually have to pass it through a barrel to be able to call it a whiskey, and then we use our maturation process, which we're probably going to talk about a little bit more in detail later. But this took us about 3 days to make this whiskey.
So it was aged for 3 days, and that's it. Is that correct?
We call it matured for 3 days.
Matured for 3 days.
Because technically, according to the TDB, we can't claim any age unless it's in the barrel.
It's very, like, looking at the color just off the bat, very light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. It's 3 days, though. I would not guess it's 3 days.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely got a nice bit of sweetness. I get the floral notes.
Yeah. And I think I know which Japanese whiskey you're referring to.
Okay, I was wondering if you would agree that it reminds me of something, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, very
she's
fruity.
that you had before.
yeah, she's our expert on Japanese whiskeys and other I don't want to say random whiskeys, but she has a very wide range of interest, wine, you name it. A brings a lot to that.
One of the things that really blows a lot of people away, and I think you'll see this as we go through the tasting, is that this same white spirit was used to make both this Japanese-inspired whiskey as well as the bourbon that you're going to taste in a little bit. And those two products could not be more different in terms of sensory profile, aroma, color, taste, yet they both started with the exact same white spirit. And that really speaks to the power of this craft maturation process that we've developed to really let us control maturation to get, the exact results that we're looking for.
Well, I was going to say, let's kind of hop right into that as we also talk about kind of what we're getting here. Aging it in hours or days instead of years. How? How does that happen?
Yeah, and again, the first thing to highlight is, as Martin said, it's maturation. It's not aging, right? Maturation is what happens over time when traditional products are aged. We're achieving that maturation by taking more precise control of the process. We actually use the exact same traditional elements that go into barrel aging in terms of we only use source spirit and wood, and then we use toast and chars as treatments to the wood. We don't use any additives. We don't use any chemicals. We've just reimagined the process to painstakingly source the raw materials, to craft the wood blends that we use in making our spirit, and then to control the environment to precisely control the chemical reactions that occur to get the results that we want. So it's almost like rather than putting the spirit in the barrel and then waiting hopefully but helplessly for nature to take its course, we instead deconstructed the barrel, put the barrel and the spirit together in our machine, and we control the process precisely to craft a result. It's a creative process, not a subtractive or a filtering process. And we call the process craft maturation. And it's really about bringing the same level of craft and creativity that has historically only been applied to fermentation and distillation, finally to maturation, which is arguably where the majority of a spirit's value gets created, because it's where the majority of the aroma, color, and taste get instilled into that spirit.
Yeah, and Jonathan, the idea came really out of a wine and whiskey club where we're talking first actually about wines. I wanted to have some of the nice unaffordable Bordeaux wines, right? And then we said, okay, how much do we need to spend? And then somebody said, oh yeah, you can buy, what year was it? Let's say 2015, right? Chateau Margaux for $800, right? Or if we all put together, right, we can buy a bottle. But then somebody said, yeah, but then we need to wait 20 years, right? Before we, at least that's what they tell us, right? Before we should drink it, right? And then we, okay, so we need to buy a 20-year-old. Right, and we're like, okay, now we're not gonna spend $2,000, right, on a 20-year-old, right? And then the discussion came about whiskeys, right, and spirit, same thing, right? Why is there such a price difference between 12 and 15 years? And that kind of started the whole idea with today's technology that we have available, right? The material science, the analytical methods that we have, and the data science that has developed so strongly over the past, let's say 10, 15 years, where we should be able to do this in a different way. And the fascinating part about it is not really that it just takes 3 days, right? But the fascinating part is that 3 days gives you a learning cycle that is hundreds or 1,000 times faster than today's traditional industry. And those learning cycles enable you to really, really learn and get data and get knowledge, right? Rather than being experience driven. Right? Because if you have to wait 10 years, 20 years, right, you just have to listen to somebody else how to do things. And so being a material scientist, I kind of understood that immense power if you can learn so fast what that would mean for being able to create all kinds of things and spirits that nobody has tried before.
What are you thinking there, A?
No, I'm an engineer myself. I'm a mechanical engineer. So I did read a little bit about Bespoken before this in terms of kind of how you guys kind of started in terms of the Silicon Valley of the kind of whiskey maturation as a service. So just in terms of kind of data and analytics, I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are currently doing with all those data, matching it to the changing customer preference? I mean, like as a whiskey drinker or bourbon drinker, American bourbon drinker, there's some specific, very specific kind of profiles that bourbon drinkers would want, and I feel like it's ever changing year by year with the different type of cask maturation or just the proof points.
Yeah, I mean, we gather tons of data, right? We do a chemical fingerprint on every source spirit that we work with, every resultant spirit that we create from that spirit. And we're also able to map that data to customer preferences and recipes and results. And we can use all of that data for better customer intimacy and analytics. We can use that data for designing other recipes to meet specific, requests or profiles. And it allows us to take advantage of, as Martin said, this incredibly fast learning cycle. It allowed us, in the first couple of years of the company, we did so much experimentation. We probably produced, more spirits in our first couple of years than most major brands have produced in their entire lives, because we could learn from that very quickly. I often like to describe our company as a cross between 23andMe, Nespresso, and Impossible Foods. Right, we're like 23andMe in that with all this data that we gather, we're mapping the spirit's genome, if you will. Right, we're like Nespresso because our machine, the activator, takes in the spirit and this handcrafted microstave, we call it mixture for each of our recipes, and that's kind of like the pod, if you will, in an espresso. And press a button, and in a couple of days, out comes the desired spirit. And we're like Impossible Foods because we're bringing more art and science to a process that hasn't had a lot of science or sustainability applied to it historically.
Yeah, I was gonna say typically the one tough part with this industry is time. I mean, time is money, and it's very, very expensive to launch and then wait, or you got to source and while other things go. So it's a tough go. Chris, what are you thinking on something that's 3 days old?
It's good. It's kind of surprised me. It's I wouldn't expect this for 3 days. It's crazy. Science and technology. I would have never expected it. Now, if you guys so you guys can target specific flavor profiles to make certain batches and things like that. If you had like a, request for it or a market for it.
That's right. We sell our own Bespoken branded spirits, which is obviously what we're tasting today. But about half of our business is doing work behind the scenes for other distillers, rectifiers, retailers, celebrities, you name it. And when we're doing work for those folks, they're generally coming in and saying, this is what I've got and this is what I want it to become, right? And sometimes they know exactly what they want. I want this much vanilla, I want this much caramel, I want this much citrus. Yep. Most of the time they say, I want it to be like this. And they either hold up something they've made in the past or some other brand that they're trying to be in the same ballpark with. And we use that guidance and all of our data to produce samples and build some experiments and get their feedback and hone in on what they're looking for. And once we've honed in on what they're looking for, we take that recipe and we scale it up into production.
It's amazing. Again, we were talking beforehand, technology is crazy, great when it works, frustrating when it doesn't, but it's also really cool to see what you can apply it to. Next, I guess we'll go to our second pour. It's this nice pink label for those watching, or
purple.
My goodness, purple. Pink is what we just had. I'm having a great night, guys. I really haven't had that much to drink.
You must have tried them before.
This is the American light whiskey, which up until this year, I'd never heard of anything called a light whiskey, but I have seen a few others do that. Can you talk a little bit about the light whiskey?
Yeah. So we actually started from a mash bill with 99 corn. And I always tell people have to disappoint them. It's not light on calories. So right, the reason it's been called in the industry, right, is because it's been distilled to a significantly higher proof, right? You probably know bourbon, you can't go above 160 proof. And this one was actually distilled to 189%, right? What that does is it removes a lot of the congeners, right? That give you like a headsy or give you a harsh mouth feel, or even when you smell it on your nose. And this one was bottled at a 50%. So it sounds not a lot more than 45, right, than what we had before. But as you're probably familiar, every percentage makes a big difference. But I think what you're gonna see is that with the wood treatment that we used, and with the starting spirit, that the finish is very, very smooth on the spirit, even though it's at 50% proof. We kind of decided to do 50, primarily driven by a little bit of history and bottled in bond, right? People love the 100% proof, but also to give people the opportunity to kind of add some water to it and actually see how the spirit changes. Like we just had last night a whiskey tasting where somebody said, "Oh my God, I just put in a couple of milliliters, right, of water, and this is a completely different spirit." So it's a really, really nice experience, and that's why we bottle it a little bit on the higher end, so that the consumer can kind of try and see what they actually prefer.
This one's a little bit sweeter than some of the other ones you're gonna taste.
Oh yeah. It's, for me, it's all, I always call it marzipan, whether it's almond or marzipan, but this one is just overwhelmingly, to me, it's always my more or less my dominant expression. But not everybody gets that. And I would love to hear what you guys are getting on the nose. Yeah,
I definitely smell vanilla for sure. Like it's a nice kind of like sweetness.
Yeah, that one
finish.
Yeah, that vanilla comes amazingly out on this particular spirit when you make a whiskey sour, for instance. The vanilla, I have no idea. I haven't thought about it yet, why it comes so out when you add a little bit of acidity or whiskey sour. It's like nothing else I ever had from a whiskey sour, from a vanilla aroma that comes with it.
Oh yeah, it'll be really good in a whiskey sour, I think.
Yeah. That's Stu's favorite.
This one is my personal favorite. Yeah, and then a whiskey sour, just I could kick back with those any day.
Yeah.
And you know, I really find this one surprising. A lot of people that I taste this one with find it surprising that it's as high proof as it is, but it doesn't drink that way. Right? It's got a lot less burn for the proof than you might see out of other things that are similarly proofed.
Yeah, if I would have had to guess, I would have said it was closer to 90 than 100.
Any other notes you're getting?
I got a lot of caramel, like dark fruit on the nose, but the marzipan, since whenever you said it, now it's marzipan.
Can't get it out.
It's like almond, yeah.
It's definitely
And
different
this is
than
also
the first
3
one.
days? Oh, very different.
Yeah.
There's no floral to me on this one.
And that's something, you know, we take very seriously, right? Our name Bespoken comes from the ability, obviously, to create tailored or custom, you know, bespoken products. And we believe very, very seriously about everybody has their own tastes, right? And they know what they like and they know what they don't like. And rather than trying to get people to conform to, you know, one particular product and say, this is the best and the only one, we have a portfolio of products. And again, the 4 that we've chosen to sample with you today are really representative of the range of what we can offer, so that, you know, when we do a tasting, not everybody's going to like the same one, but everybody's going to like one of them. And we really take a lot of pride and joy out of seeing that there's always something that somebody latches onto as a favorite. Even between Martin and myself, we're like polar opposites, right? He's the material scientist and he's a food and beverage, you know, aficionado. I'm the business guy and I've got that everyman's palate, right? So I tend to gravitate towards the sweeter end of the portfolio like this one. He tends to gravitate towards the more nuanced and I don't know, how would you describe your favorite ones, Martin? Sophisticated?
Well, thank you. That sounds good. I
didn't want to call you a snob.
Or snobby. I just did. It's okay. That's somehow, I don't know why, but my friends keep saying that. I have no idea why.
And then as A asked, how long has this one been matured?
Actually,
I'm using
also, like, I believe everything we're tasting today was actually 3 days.
Now, do you guys ever mature anything older than that, or is it typically 3 days?
Yeah. Depending really on the recipe, and then depending a lot as we're gonna get to the straight right later on, right? Here we had to start. So Stu mentioned our customers, right? So many times we get spirit that was already matured for, I think the longest we ever got was something 9 years, where the customer wasn't happy with it when it came out of the barrel. And rather than putting it back in the barrel and kind of again crossing fingers and hoping, right, we then tailor the spirits to the profile that they're interested in. Because very often you don't really know what you're gonna get right after a couple of years, and the only option you have is put it back if you don't like it yet.
So we're typically not doing any more than 3 to 5 days of our magic to the spirit. But as Martin said, we can start with spirits that have been aged before we get to them, so that we can cross thresholds for what we can call different things in different places around the world, and then still add all of our value on top of that foundation, because we could take something that's been 2 years aged, that therefore can be called a straight bourbon, but make it much better than what you would typically find from just a 2-year-old bourbon.
Now, so do you guys typically, use something already kind of created, or do you use kind of what you call what most might think of like the white dog or the white
dog?
Yeah.
Question.
Is that kind of how you start, or is it just
we are not a distiller.
Mhm.
So we always source the distillate, whether
Mhm.
it's for our products or for, when we're working with customers, we're typically using their source spirit. And then we do our work on top of it to get the desired result that we're looking for.
Yeah, and the 2 spirits you tasted so far all started from a white dog.
Okay. And do you only do like American whiskey, any like malted barley, single malt kind of white dog? I don't know if it's called white dog and like malted barley.
Our focus has clearly been American style whiskeys, but we've done malted. Our malt whiskey won a double gold in San Francisco. We've done
New York last month.
New York. So in New York last month, we had a agave-based spirit. We can't call it tequila. That won double gold in San Francisco, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And we've also made brandies. We have a beautiful rum that was sourced. The sugar cane came from U.S. Virgin Islands and then was distilled with a partner distillery down in Southern California. So yeah, we can apply the principles on any type of spirit.
How about wine?
It takes us a couple of learning cycles.
Is it just spirits, or are you also looking to do it maturation for wine as well, like grape? Because you said
technology
brandy, and
itself
I thought about
really applies to anything that's barrel aged, right? So spirits, wine,
Gotcha.
soy sauce, vinegar. I mean, you name it. But as a company, we focused on spirits because obviously you can work on them year round, and it's a massive market in its own right, and less effort. It seems like less science and energy has gone into maturation of spirits than has gone into maturation of wine historically.
Gotcha.
Interesting. And I guess, we've talked about it so much, but how much, when we talk about, or as I've learned, science goes into everything with whiskey and any distilling or brewing. I mean, there's just so much more than just, throw it in a pot and it all turns out great. I mean, how is there extra steps with where you guys are kind of doing, a different process? I mean, because you kind of talked about you're flipping it kind of inside out, so to speak. So, I mean, does that change the science of how you go about things?
Well, it doesn't change the science per se, but what I like to say is what our process uses a lot less time, but it requires more effort. It's more painstaking in the short period of time that we're doing things. Because what we're really doing is rather than using one barrel, right, to throw a spirit into, where wood being a natural occurring element, you never know what you're going to get and what ratios or combinations, and it's never consistent. What we do is we build a mixture that we handcraft for each recipe of what we call micro staves. And a micro stave is a small piece of wood. It's roughly 1/25,000th the size of a barrel, so maybe half the size of your little finger. And it's sourced from the same kind of stave that people build barrels out of. But what happens is, because it's so small, it's a lot more precise in what elements of the wood each micro stave brings to our recipe or not. Whereas again, in a barrel, you get some of what you want, some of what you don't want. By us hand selecting the micro staves that we want to use for a given recipe, we're getting just what we want. And what we'll do is we'll handcraft a mixture of these micro staves. For one recipe, it might be all American oak. For another recipe, we might mix some American oak with some French oak with some cherry, for instance. So what we're doing is we're very painstakingly sourcing our staves, turning them into micro staves, characterizing them for the elements of the wood that they have in them or don't have them in them, and then building mixtures of different types and quantities and ratios for the results that we want. And then once we've painstakingly crafted that blend, we then have the levers of toast and char that we can add to the equation, where again, contrasting to the old method where you have high, medium, and low, and they're never well defined and they're never consistent, we have tremendous granularity on our toast and char. We can do it to individual staves or groups of staves. We can do it at different surfaces, at different temperatures, for different durations, in different air mixtures and humidities and so forth and so on. And all these levers of the micro staves and the toast and the char, and then the environmental settings in the machine for temperature, pressure, et cetera, give us 20 billion plus combinations we can use in crafting our recipes. And that's the foundation of how we can craft individual, sensory profiles based on what we're trying to achieve.
God bless science.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
20 billion. That's a lot of combinations.
And by the way, one of the biggest, benefits of this approach is because we're just using, a smaller number of these micro staves, and we're doing it so quickly, our process is far more sustainable than the old, barrel aging model. And that we're typically using 97% less wood, 99% less energy, and at least 20% less water than the traditional methods. And so that, that certainly appeals to the today's modern consumer, as well as the taste and the profile.
That's awesome. And then, as we move along on the number, we have a couple more to get to. This one is a double gold from the San Francisco World Spirits competition. This is gray label. I can correctly tell colors now. This is the straight bourbon whiskey. First time that we've had one that you guys can call a bourbon. So it's aged at least 24 months. Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. So exactly. So we purchased barrels that were 24 months old, and the purpose of this was kind of to be able to compete with the big guys, right? When you go to the competitions, when you kind of look at least American whiskey, right? It's all about the straight bourbons, right? And we wanted to see if we apply our process to something that was matured for only 2 years, which, as you probably know, not a lot of people really bottle at that age, right? Especially not the more established people, and then apply our process to see what we can do. And yeah, this was our first submission of the spirit, and it won a double gold. We didn't even have it at the market at the time, and we got calls and calls and calls after that. Where's the straight bourbon? Where's the straight bourbon? So we had to hustle and make it. And again, so 2 years in a barrel, 3 days applying our process.
I was gonna say
wow.
it's a good thing you have that quick process then, as long as you had all the barrels,
Yeah.
right? that type
That's
of need.
impressive.
Yeah, come back 2 years later, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the beauty of it. You can predict demand that way with that short
react to demand. Yeah, right. React. Suddenly people fall in love with rum next month, right? We can make a rum.
And again, just to reiterate, what really surprises a lot of people is to realize that straight bourbon that you're tasting and the first Japanese style whiskey that you tasted come from the same white spirit.
From the same mash bill, yeah.
Yeah, the same mash bill.
And that was the high rye mash bill?
That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, the 21 rye. So wait, I forgot to say that sourced from MGP.
So again, the only, the main difference between those two profiles
Wow.
is the different wood mixture, microstave mixture that we crafted for it, and then the, how we controlled the toast and the char in the environment, and that is able to take this foundation and make it, more of a floral aromatic Japanese style whiskey, or make it more of a vanilla caramel bourbon whiskey.
Wow, this is a good one.
Thank you.
This is a good one. It has a lot of nuances that I would think like a straight bourbon whiskey would have, but it also has like that vanilla, caramel, cinnamon, and also dark fruits. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely get
94 proof. Yeah.
Yeah, we bottled it at 94 proof. That was, we talked a lot about chemical fingerprinting, right? But we also have an internal and an external tasting panel, and people who are from the industry who have written books about bourbon and all kinds of things. And that was the proof that they settled on. One thing that is also different from what we do compared to the industry, other than if you really go for the whiskey that comes straight out of the barrel, is that our maturation process, we do it at the proof that we bottle. So not like many people in the industry, we don't dilute it down with water, right? Because as you know, you kind of put it in the barrel typically, right? A bourbon to 125 proof, and then depending on how many years you had it in there, it probably ends. If you take it could get up to a 140 proof, right? And then gets diluted down with water, right, to get to your 90 proof, and we don't do that, and that way we can also really tailor and adjust the spirit exactly to the flavor profile that we want to.
That's pretty cool to not dilute it, and you already know what kind of proof you're gonna get at the end.
Oh yeah, when I tell some of my friends, they're always shocked when I tell them, this expensive bottle, half of it is tap water.
that is like, true.
Oh, no, don't say this. No.
And obviously, without Angel share, you're keeping 20% more of your spirit than you would otherwise have lost over your maturation process.
Correct. It does say colored and flavored. What does that mean by color?
Yeah, that's thanks to the TDB, right? So we don't add any color other than the TDB required us to do this, even though we only use wood, right? And you never know what the TDB asks you to do, right? But yeah, there are no color additives. Everything is just like Stu said, right? It's the spirit and the wood, right? And the TDB required us to call it that way, which kind of annoys us a little bit. The colored part, at least, right? But yeah, nothing we can do.
Well, we comply. It's interesting. Within our portfolio, we actually have 3 different bourbons. Right, we have one that's actually we can't call a bourbon. It's called whiskey distilled from bourbon mash. That's our black label because it hasn't spent, the requisite time in a new oak barrel. And then we've got our bourbon, which is the Kentucky Blue bottle, and that one has spent 3 months in a barrel before we did our magic to it. And then we have the straight bourbon, which you're tasting, which spent 24 months in the barrel before we do our magic to it.
Chris, what are you thinking down there? I mean, would you assume 2-year-old juice?
I mean, if you would have gave this to me blind, I probably would have said maybe 4-ish. I definitely think it tastes a little bit older than what it is, which is good. I mean, it's very flavorful for 2 years. Nice hints of caramel, cinnamon. It's definitely surprising for sure.
Yeah, I think to me it's pretty flavorful. I get a lot of the kind of like Ace, it's some of that dark fruit, which is right up my alley. That's kind of where I live in my favorite go-to pours. But yeah, I mean, if you blinded me this, I would not say 2, which I'm going to attribute to that maturation process where you're able to bring out the kind of flavors that all of us are looking for.
That's cool.
Now, how did you?
Just a question.
Oh, go for it, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just a question in terms of because I see that there's batch number here. Do you guys have kind of standard batch profile for each one of these, or is each kind of year going to be a little bit variety?
No, the beauty is
Okay.
with the process, right? With being able to control all the input variables, right? You won't be able to tell a difference from batch to batch, unless it's intentionally.
Okay.
And there might be, we like, for instance, the special batch is something where we are intending to release something different next year, right? Again, something special, different. But yeah, no,
Like the pink one that we tried is
yeah,
different per
yeah,
year.
yeah.
That's why it's called. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you.
And you guys talk about winning awards. How nice is it to? I mean, obviously, at the end of the day, everyone wants, or at least hopes their work gets noticed. Whether that's through the people buying it, which is truthfully the key to it all, but also when others in the industry recognize it. I mean, that has to be pretty cool, especially for something like, say, the the straight bourbon, the gray label, because I mean that one you're going up against more probably what would be the common type of whiskey that people are entering. Some of the other ones, the special batch, the light whiskey might not be as big of a category, but the straight bourbon, I mean, that's probably what everyone's got one of.
Yeah, and as you know, you can't get better than a double gold, right, in those competitions. So that was of course fantastic. But I still think back when we call this the original, our very first bottling, the black bottle, and this was very early on in the company, but we kind of knew we had to get a label and everything to be able to put it into competitions. And we had submitted it in, I think it was both like around summertime, and within 2 weeks we got 1 gold medal in the first competition, and we're like, oh my god, right? And then literally 2 weeks later we got another gold medal in New York. And I think at that point it was for us like, oh my god, right? We are not, maybe we are not too biased, right? It seems like people, because it's always tough, right? You have tastings with people and everybody likes it, and probably no matter. So this was amazing, and I remember I won't forget the day where we got our first medal, no doubt.
It was also very important for us because, as you said earlier in this call, Jonathan, what we do is different. Right. And so when you tell somebody what we do, the first reaction is usually one of awe and wow and excitement. And then the next reaction is, well, can it really be any good? Why should I believe it? And unfortunately, the reality of human beings is if you have somebody taste it after you've told them that, they're biased, right? But in a blind tasting, in a competition where none of that is known, that's where you get the real results. So we felt it was really important to go to competition to see and to validate that we could produce premium quality products. And then when we got repeat medals, and then when we got it for everything that we made, right? What's really exciting here is we're not a one-trick pony, right? Every whiskey we've made has gotten, gold medals in prestigious competitions. And our other spirits, our rums, our gins, our brandies, our tequilas, agave spirits, have also, won our malt have also won these medals. And that for us is the real ultimate validation when you take the story out of the equation and just let the taste buds do the talking.
You kind of lead into a perfect question, because I was going to ask this. I mean, how difficult is it, when someone looks at this and they see, it doesn't technically say bourbon, it says American light whiskey, or it says, distilled from a mash bill, because you guys are not allowed, depending on what country it's in or where it's at. There's very strict things. Tequila's got to be done down in in the tequila region of Mexico, cognac and France, things like that. I mean, is that difficult because you talk about how there's kind of that weird bias when you tell someone all this cool stuff, but I also got to feel like there's a bias when someone sees aged for 3 months, or here's that it's matured for 3 days, because like you said, everyone assumes, well, that can't be good because that's not what we've been taught, quote unquote, taught to think.
Yeah, I think if that's your first and only exposure, right? If your first and only exposure is you see the bottle on the shelf and you read, whatever qualifiers we're forced to put on from the TTB, that may cause questions. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting out and telling people the story and doing tastings and doing flights and things like that, is because if you hear the story first and then you go in and you see it on the shelf, it's a very different experience. And that's certainly what we're looking to capitalize on. One of the things we believe, though, is, and you guys probably have seen this or are certainly well aware of it, is there's a shifting demographic happening within the spirits industry, right? Whereas 5-10 years ago, the main consumer of spirits was your baby boomer, right? Today, you've got a more modern, millennial, Gen Z centric consumer of spirits, and this generation doesn't want to drink the same things that their daddy drank, if you could pardon the expression, right? In fact, if they know that their daddy drank a brand, they're not going anywhere near that brand. They also tend to be less brand loyal, and they tend to be more tech savvy and care about causes like climate change. They want variety and value. And that's really a lot of the ethos that we really tap into. In fact, one of the reasons we created this range of products, as I said earlier, was so we have something for everyone. But the other thing we did is, in addition to the 750 milliliter bottles that we now have, we started out originally with just 375 milliliter bottles. And I don't know which one you guys actually have. But the value of the 375 milliliter bottles is we allow customers, for the same price they would pay for one big bottle of something else, to try 2 of ours and try some of that variety, taste the special batch alongside the bourbon, and be blown away by that, wow, that same source can go in these 2 different directions. Or try the American Light with the rye and see sweet and spicy, and that's really that experience, and that modern consumer is really kind of a lot of the ethos that we've built the brand for.
I like that, and you mentioned the rye. We'll go to our last one, the green label. I see. I'm paying attention now. Can you talk a little bit about the rye?
Yes, I have to admit that is my favorite from the ones that you had. Can't wait to hear what you guys think. So again, we started with a distillate that we actually got from MGP. We did buy new fill barrels in this case, and by the time we get them, we then put them into our activator. So they're somewhere around 3 months old. The spirit, same thing like for bourbon, as you know, right? You have to mature it or age it in New American charred oak barrels, so you can call it a rye whiskey. So in this case, also 3 months. It's the famous 95 rye 5 malt from MGP. And we bottled this one also at 50% alcohol, 100% proof. And this spirit won best in category at the World Whiskey Awards in the UK. It also won best in category actually just at the World Spirits and Wine competition in New York 2 weeks ago. And
wow! Congrats!
I love the nose. I just. People always tell me I shouldn't put my big nose in that little tiny glass, but I just do it anyway because that's how I like it, and I just can nose this spirit all day because it's I think it's so rich, and then hopefully you'll also agree also on the palate, it just lasts for eternity.
I was gonna say, it definitely has that rye, yeah.
There's no mint though whatsoever in the rye.
Interesting.
And I get tobacco, by the
way. Because I never get the mint too, but there's so many people who say, "Oh my God, it's so minty! It's so minty."
We hear spearmint a lot from people when they taste this one, or smell this one. Excuse me.
Definitely kind of some tobacco on the back end though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that tobacco bitterness, and it's like, oh wow, I don't really usually get tobacco leaves, which is kind of odd. But there's like something floral as well in the palate. This is a nice rye, actually. It's nice body to it too. Mm-hmm. It's like a good fall sipper.
Yeah, it's not very spicy.
Yeah. Wow, this might be my favorite, because I was thinking like, which ones of this my favorite? The special batch is like really good, by the way. I really like that. Okay, nice. And I think the rye, this is good. Beautiful nose.
You're allowed to have 2 favorites.
Are you sure it's not like kids and they're just all your favorite? I mean,
no, there gotta
anybody
be a winner,
who has
right?
kids know that they're not all your favorite.
I played the fifth, although technically I only have one so far. So we're, but as we're drinking the rye, I also want to, how did you two meet? Because Martin, you come from, I know you both ended up in the Silicon Valley area. You both live there, but Martin, you kind of come from overseas, the Czech Republic, Germany, to here. Stu, you're an entrepreneur. Martin, you're a scientist. Was this just at a whiskey club? All of a sudden, you both found out you like things, or was it just by pure luck, or what?
Stu, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we actually first met each other 15 years ago. We worked for the same company, which was another sustainably focused company, which was a fuel cell company called Bloom Energy. And at Bloom, Martin ran kind of the hardcore technology development, and I ran the marketing and business development functions. And we, had worked together for a number of years. And as through that work experience, we started a regular kind of Saturday morning, get out of the house, hit a few golf balls kind of thing with a few friends. And just kind of kept that going. And one day about 4 or 5 years ago, Martin pitched me the idea. And I just fell in love with it because, if you think about building a company and a business, obviously you want to be excited about the space and, being folks that love spirits. It was, it's great to apply all the lessons we learned in Silicon Valley to that. But, perhaps more importantly, what you look for is you look for a massive market to address. And, spirits are a $500 billion a year global market. You look for a market that's ripe for change and disruption. And whether it's because of climate change or because of the changing demographic or because of the impacts of COVID-19, the spirits industry is certainly ripe for change. You look for a technology that's differentiable with which to disrupt. And certainly this technology that we've invented is really a game changer. And then last but not least, you look for a mission like sustainability to make it a passion project and not just an interesting business. And, with all those things in Bespoken, it was just a no-brainer. And so we started talking and developing the idea, and Martin went to work in his garage and started the company, and the rest is history.
And still friends?
Most of the time.
That's
like
awesome.
I said before, we're like the yin and the yang. We're very different. He's European. I'm American. He's a material scientist. I'm a business guy. He's the foodie and beverage guy, and I'm the everyman's palate. But it gives us very complementary skills in running the business, and it also gives us a very broad palette in terms of building products for different demographics and different consumers. And as I said earlier, that's what we strive to do within our portfolio, is have something for everybody.
Very well said. We don't agree, but we trust each other. That helps a lot.
I like that. And I've let the rye sit for a little bit, a couple ice cubes in there, and to me, it's opened it up a little bit for me and my palate. Yeah, that wasn't what I was expecting when I did that.
It's like
Chris?
drinking black tea.
Yeah, I definitely think the rye might be my favorite out of the bunch.
Okay.
And then probably the special batch, then the straight, and then maybe the light whiskey. That'd be probably my order.
I was gonna say I wasn't high on the rye until I added the ice cubes, but now it's either that or the straight bourbon. But that says a lot that you're able to kind of, for me, get two different varieties that I'm kind of battling back and forth on what I enjoy more. And as Stu said, I can like them both, and I do. Chris, any other questions? As we kind of wind down our night here.
No, I'm pretty good. I love that it's just kind of like technology and whiskey meshing together. It's awesome.
Hey, you thinking of anything?
I'm very impressed, truthfully, because I came to tonight or afternoon or morning, whatever, just kind of with an open mind, but also have my I love whiskey and I love the arts and crafts of whiskey, but I'm also I love technology, science, using data, big analytics, and it's very impressive what you guys are doing in terms of kind of making the products. I mean, I would love to learn more, and I think there are a couple of things I could read up online in terms of the technology, and I think that's what I'll be doing. But truthfully, I've been very impressed, especially like I just pour a little bit more of the special batch. That special batch is truly very interesting because like it's very floral, very fruity candy, like candy thing. Very sippable. Like I would say it's a summer sipper, spring sipper, but it's a beautiful like pink color too, which is like I think it's appropriate. So I think you guys are doing the right thing here. It's just I think for people who loves whiskey or connoisseur snobs, like really like I think it would you have to keep an open mind in terms of like all this new disrupt. I mean, because you guys are doing disrupting like the industry pretty much with this technology, and that's something to be said for an industry that is baby boomers, and you know like that. My dad drinks Jack Daniels kind of thing, and I'm gonna be drinking Jack Daniels or Wild Turkey, and the products that you guys are putting in definitely speaks for itself, and truly, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and it's weird too because you know like where I've dove into this now for about a year and a half doing the podcast and just getting into bourbon more than I did before. You know, you hear a lot of, you know, there's a lot of different folks trying different things to speed up the process. You know, and some work kinda, you know, like people go, well, they're getting there. They're, you know, it's okay. You know, that are doing those quick 3-month maturation processes and different things. But truthfully, what you guys are doing is very impressive because, like I said, if you blinded me with some of these, I would never know that, you know, that they were 3 days of maturation or even that it's a 2-year-old bourbon, technically, you know, by technical standards, but it's, you know, something completely different. And as A said, that goes back to what you guys are doing with that. Coming up with new releases, what can you say? What can you not say? How does that work? I mean, do you guys kind of have a set thing, you know, like, you know, how some of the big boys, you know, the antique collection just came out for some. I mean, do you guys have like set releases or is it just kind of what ends up clicking at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, it's more the latter, and obviously we don't want to steal any of our future thunder. We did just roll out the 750 milliliter packaging, so that's a relatively new addition for us. And the straight bourbon is, as you heard earlier, is a relatively new addition to our portfolio as well after it did so well in competition earlier this year. So those are the newest members of the portfolio, and we'll stay mum on what's to come for the time being. By the way, for anybody who's interested in either learning more, as Ariella talked about earlier, or finding retailers or e-tailers where they could get our products, you could go to bespokenspirits.com. There's lots of good information on there. And also check out our Instagram at Bespoken Spirits.
Well, Stu, Martin, I truly appreciate y'all coming on. Folks, if you're listening, don't forget to give us a nice review on your favorite podcast player. Also find us at hopspirits.com and on social media at hopspirits, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. We're also on YouTube as well, where you can watch episodes like this instead of listening. Ariella, Chris, Stu, Martin, thank you all so much for being part of this.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Enjoyed the time.
Yeah.